The oldest man at the table had been asleep for most of dinner, his silver head tilted toward the high back of his chair while 20 members of the Delaney family passed food, exchanged old jokes, and tried to decide whether I was worthy of marrying their youngest daughter. I had nearly convinced myself that he would sleep through dessert when his eyes opened and fixed directly on me. He did not look confused. He looked relieved. "Andrew," he said, and every fork in the dining room stopped moving. Grace's fingers tightened around mine beneath the table. My name was not Andrew. It was Nathan Cole, and until 4 days earlier, I had never met anyone in the Delaney family. I had been hired through a private social agency to pose as Grace's fiancé for one weekend because her parents refused to accept that a 32-year-old woman could attend her sister's wedding without being treated like a family emergency. The rules were simple: hold her hand, remember our invented history, survive one formal dinner, and disappear before Monday morning. Then the old man pushed himself upright and asked the question that changed the entire room. "Why did you finally decide to come home?" A woman near the fireplace dropped her wineglass. Grace's father went pale. Her uncle stood so quickly that his chair struck the wall behind him. The old man continued staring at me with eyes made sharp by something stronger than age. "We waited 35 years, he said. Your mother died believing you had forgotten the road." Grace leaned close enough that only I could hear her. "That's my great-uncle Samuel. He does not have dementia." I looked around the table. No one laughed, no one corrected him. They were all watching my face as though it belonged to someone they had buried without a body. "Sir," I said carefully, "my name is Nathan." Samuel shook his head. "That is what they called you after they sent you away." "Sent you away?" Grace's father, Robert Delaney, stepped toward him. "Uncle Samuel, you are tired." "I am old, Robert. I am not blind." Samuel reached across the table. When I placed my hand in his thumb moved over a crescent-shaped scar near my wrist. The scar had been there for as long as I could remember. My mother said I received it during a childhood accident, though she could never explain exactly what happened. Samuel began to cry. "You got this climbing the iron fence behind the orchard," he whispered. "You were 11. Your mother tore her dress wrapping your arm." The room seemed to tilt beneath me. I withdrew my hand. "I did not grow up here." "No," Samuel said. "You were taken from here." Grace's mother covered her mouth. Robert's expression hardened. "That is enough." "No," Grace said, standing beside me. "It is not enough." "Who is Andrew?" Nobody answered. Samuel looked at her as though disappointed that she needed to ask. "Andrew Delaney was your father's older brother." Grace turned slowly toward Robert. "You told us you were an only child." Robert stared at Samuel instead of his daughter. "My brother died." "Then why does Uncle Samuel think Nathan is him?" "Because Uncle Samuel is remembering a young man who vanished decades ago." "Vanished or died?" Grace demanded. "The distinction matters." Her father's jaw tightened. "This is your sister's wedding weekend. We will not reopen old tragedies because a hired stranger resembles someone from the past." The word hired passed through the room like another broken glass. Grace went completely still. I had not told anyone about the contract, and neither had she. Robert looked at the sapphire ring on his daughter's finger and then at me. "Did you think I would not investigate a man who appeared without warning, claiming he planned to marry my child?" Grace removed her hand from mine. "You investigated him?" "The agency confirmed his employment this afternoon." Murmurs spread around the table. Her sister Claire stared at us in disbelief. Grace's mother sat down as if her knees had failed. Robert faced the family. "There is no engagement. Grace hired this man to deceive us." Grace lifted her chin. "Because every person in this room has spent years treating my private life like a defect that needed repair. That does not justify bringing a stranger into our home." "No," she replied. "But perhaps his presence is the first honest thing that has happened in this house for 35 years." She looked toward Samuel. "Tell us who Andrew was." Before the old man could answer, Robert ordered the staff to take him upstairs. Samuel resisted until his eyes found mine again. "The blue room," he whispered. "Your mother left the truth beneath the blue room." Two staff members guided him away. Robert turned to me. "You will leave tonight." I should have agreed. The arrangement had collapsed, the family was hostile, and whatever secret connected me to Andrew Delaney had nothing to do with the woman who hired me, yet Grace stepped between her father and me. "Nathan stays until we understand why Uncle Samuel recognized his scar. He stays and you forfeit your seat on the Delaney Foundation board." The threat landed exactly where Robert intended. Grace had spent 3 years building a proposal to convert part of the family's unused estate into a residential education center for teenagers aging out of foster care. The board planned to vote on her project after the wedding. Her father knew it was the reason she had come home and the reason she had invented the engagement. She looked at me and I saw the choice tear through her. "Then I forfeit the seat," she said. "Grace," I warned, "this project matters more than whatever happened to my family. Your family may be my family." Her voice shook, but she did not retreat. "I will not let him send you away because the truth is inconvenient." Robert left the dining room without another word. Grace's relatives followed in small, uneasy groups until only her mother, her sister, and I remained. Claire closed the doors. "Start at the beginning," she said. "How did you two meet?" Grace gave a humorless laugh. "At a hotel bar on Tuesday." 4 days earlier, I had been waiting for a contractor who never arrived when Grace Delaney approached my table and asked whether I could convincingly love someone I did not know. I assumed she was joking until she placed a professional companion contract beside my coffee. I had registered with the agency 6 months earlier after my small carpentry business collapsed under debt left by a dishonest partner. Most assignments involved charity events, corporate dinners, or acting as a guest so a client did not have to attend alone. I had never played a fiancé. Grace sat across from me wearing a charcoal suit and the expression of a woman accustomed to solving emergencies before breakfast. She had dark auburn hair, hazel eyes, and a calm voice that became even calmer when she was angry. "The assignment lasts from Friday afternoon until Sunday evening," she said. "You will attend my sister's rehearsal dinner, the wedding, and one family brunch." Why does a wedding require a temporary engagement? My family measures women by their proximity to marriage. That sounds exhausting. It is. Why not attend alone? Because my father chairs the family foundation. He believes unmarried women make impulsive long-term decisions. That is offensive. It is also the reason 2 board members are reluctant to approve my housing program. She explained the BOW project. An unused schoolhouse on Delaney land could become apartments, classrooms, and job training space for young adults leaving foster care. Grace had secured grants and community partners, but her father argued that her personal life proved she lacked stability. "You plan to change his mind by pretending to be engaged," I said. "I plan to remove the argument long enough for the board to evaluate the project on its merits." "What happens after the vote?" "We announce that the engagement ended privately. That will prove your father right about instability. By then the funds will be protected." She slid the payment page toward me. The amount was enough to keep my apartment and reopen my workshop. "You chose me because I need money. I chose you because your profile says you restore historic houses, you have no criminal record, and former clients describe you as calm under pressure." That is the least romantic explanation for choosing a fiancé I have ever heard. Romance is not required. Physical contact? Only what appears natural. Hand-holding, an arm around my waist. Perhaps one kiss if my family becomes suspicious. Who determines suspicion? I do. Convenient. You can refuse any contact. She tapped the final page. No promises outside the agreed story. No emotional expectations. No attempt by either party to continue the relationship after the contract ends. You included a clause banning feelings. I included a clause preventing confusion. I should have walked away. Grace was controlled to the point of severity, and the role risked humiliating both of us. But beneath the polished sentences, I noticed that she had folded and unfolded the corner of the contract until the paper had become soft. She was afraid, though not for herself. The project mattered to her. I understood what it meant to watch a good idea fail because someone with more power preferred an easier lie. "I need to know who I am pretending to love," I said. Her eyes lifted. "Is that a yes?" "It is a conditional yes." "What conditions?" "You answer questions honestly. If I am entering a hostile family, I need to understand the terrain." "Agreed. And if anyone asks me to invest money, sign documents, or agree to an immediate wedding, I develop a sudden fever." "Acceptable. One more thing." "What?" "Stop looking at this like a legal operation. People do not believe in engagement because the facts match. They believe it because 2 people notice each other." Her gaze held mine for a second longer than necessary. "Then notice carefully," she said. The next morning, we met at a jeweler. Grace rejected every large diamond because she said her family would know she hated them. She chose a vintage sapphire surrounded by tiny white stones. When I slipped it onto her finger to check the fit, her hand trembled. Too small? I asked. No. Too expensive? That would be your concern. I am paying. You are nervous. I am considering how many questions my mother will ask. You are not nervous about the questions. She withdrew her hand. You have known me 24 hours. Long enough to know you answer quickly when you are confident and precisely when you are afraid. That is irritating. It may help us look engaged. We spent the afternoon inventing our relationship. We had met 10 months earlier while I restored a community theater funded by her foundation. Our first date took place at a small restaurant near the Chesapeake Bay. I proposed after building her a reading bench from wood recovered from the theater. That is sentimental, she said. Your mother needs to believe you accepted. What did you say during the proposal? I had not planned that detail. Your family will ask. Say something architectural. I am a carpenter. Something about foundations. I looked at her across the cafe table. I would say you spend your life creating safety for people who have never had it, but you rarely let anyone create safety for you. I would tell you that I do not want to protect you by controlling your choices. I want to stand beside you while you make them. Then I would ask whether you would trust me with the ordinary parts of your life, not only the parts that need rescuing. She stared at me. That is too intimate. Is it inaccurate? We are inventing a relationship. The best lies borrow something true. She lowered her eyes to the sapphire. Use a shorter version at dinner. During the drive to Delaney Ridge on Friday, Grace described every relative we would meet. Her mother, Margaret, managed the estate and avoided conflict until avoidance became its own form of control. Her father, Robert, ran the vineyard, the foundation, and nearly every family decision. Claire, the bride, was kinder than the rest but exhausted by years of keeping peace. Great-uncle Samuel was the last surviving member of her grandfather's generation. And your father's siblings? I asked. He has none. No cousins from his side? A few distant relatives. That seems unusual for a family large enough to fill a private dining room. She looked through the windshield. My father dislikes discussing his childhood. I thought of my own father, David Cole, who had raised me alone after my mother died. He had been loving, hardworking, and almost completely silent about everything before my birth. When I asked about grandparents, he said they were gone. When I asked where he grew up, he answered, far from where we belong. He died in a construction accident when I was 16, leaving behind a locked trunk I never managed to open, and a warning from his attorney not to search for people who had chosen to forget us. You are quiet, Grace said. Your family history reminded me of mine. You said your father died when I was 16. And your mother? 4 years earlier. Who raised you? My father until he died. Then his friend Marcus. Are you close? We speak on holidays. He believes attachment creates expectations. That explains the companion agency. You hired me. I was referring to why the work suits you. I do not deceive people for entertainment. Neither do I. She reached across the console and placed her hand over mine. For what it is worth, I am sorry about your parents. No one could see us. The gesture did not support the performance. I turned my hand beneath hers, and she did not pull away for several miles. Delaney Ridge stood on a hill overlooking rows of vines, orchards, and forest. The main house had white stone walls and dark green shutters. Margaret welcomed us with tears, embraced Grace, and examined the sapphire before looking at me. Nathan Cole, she said. Grace has told us almost nothing. We wanted privacy. Grace has called secrecy privacy since she was 12. Grace kissed her mother's cheek. And you have called interrogation concern for just as long. Claire ran down the front steps in a robe, hugged her sister, and asked whether I knew what I was marrying into. Robert arrived last. His handshake was firm, and his smile did not reach his eyes. Cole, he said, your business closed last year. Grace stiffened. Father, I research anyone joining this family. Nathan is rebuilding the company. With what capital? That is not your concern, I said. His eyebrows lifted. Grace squeezed my arm, but I could not tell whether she was warning or thanking me. Everything affecting my daughter concerns me, Robert replied. That belief is why she hid the engagement. I smiled politely. Perhaps we should begin again. He did not like me, but for the first hour he seemed to accept the role. I answered questions about restoration, described our fictional meeting, and remembered that Grace drank tea without sugar but added honey when she had a headache. When Margaret brought coffee, I replaced Grace's cup with tea before she asked, her mother noticed. So did Grace. You remembered? She whispered. A fiancé should. There is no audience close enough to hear us. I still remembered. Her expression softened before Claire called us into the dining room. Samuel sat at the head of the second table, apparently asleep. The conversation moved through wedding schedules, vineyard business, and family gossip. Aunt Lydia asked where I proposed. Grace told the story of the reading bench. When she repeated my proposal words, her voice changed. He said he did not want to make choices for me. He wanted to stand beside me while I made them. Margaret pressed a napkin to her eyes. Robert watched us with suspicion. Beneath the table, Grace found my hand. I reminded myself that touch was part of the job. Then Samuel opened his eyes and called me Andrew. After the dinner collapsed, Grace, Claire, Margaret, and I remained behind. Margaret locked the doors. Andrew was Robert's brother, she said quietly. Older by 5 years. Grace stared at her. You knew? I knew he existed. I did not know what happened. Father told me he was an only child. Your grandfather forbade the family from speaking Andrew's name. Why? Margaret looked toward the hall. He was accused of setting fire to one of the vineyard warehouses. 2 workers died. The evidence suggested he stole money from the payroll office before the fire. Did he? I asked. Samuel never believed it. Neither did Andrew's mother. My grandmother, Grace whispered. Her name was Eleanor. She spent years waiting for Andrew to return. Where did he go? No one knows. His truck was found in West Virginia. There was blood inside and no body. And my father inherited everything, Grace said. Margaret flinched. Robert was 22. He did not create the circumstances. He benefited from them. Grace picked up Samuel's photograph from the table. It showed a young man beside a barn, laughing with one hand lifted against the sun. He resembled me enough that the room felt colder. The same narrow face, dark eyes, and crescent scar near the wrist were visible. How old would Andrew be now? I asked. 70, Margaret said. Then I cannot be him. No one thinks you are, Claire replied. Samuel saw Andrew's face in yours. Could Andrew have had a son? Grace asked. Margaret shook her head. He was engaged, but the woman left after the accusation. What was her name? Rachel Cole. My surname hit the room harder than Samuel's question. I stood so quickly that my chair moved backward. Cole? Margaret nodded. She was the daughter of the estate mechanic. My father was David Cole. Rachel had a younger brother named David. I felt the air leave my lungs. My father had never mentioned a sister. Are you saying my father knew Andrew? He grew up here. Then why did he tell me he had no family? Margaret looked toward the door as though expecting Robert to return. Because after Andrew vanished, the Coles were dismissed and ordered off Delaney Land. Rachel disappeared soon after. David was 16. Grace moved beside me. Nathan, your father may have been Andrew's brother-in-law. Or Andrew may have been my father. The words emerged before I could stop them. Everyone went silent. I was 36. If Andrew had survived, he could have fathered me years later. Your birth certificate? Claire asked. List David Cole as my father. Birth certificates can contain the name of the man raising a child, Margaret said. Not necessarily the biological father. I thought of the locked trunk, the scar, and my father's refusal to discuss the past. The blue room, Grace said. Samuel said the truth was beneath it. Margaret's face changed. The blue room belonged to Eleanor. Where is it? The second floor, west wing. Robert had it sealed after she died. Grace looked at me. We search it tonight. Your father wants me gone. My father has controlled the story long enough. Claire volunteered to keep the family occupied. Margaret hesitated, then gave Grace an old brass key. Your grandmother gave me this before she died, she said. She told me one day someone would need to open what Robert kept closed. Near midnight, Grace and I crossed the west wing. The hallway smelled of dust and old wood. I carried a flashlight while she unlocked the blue door. Inside, sheets covered the furniture. Pale wallpaper had faded around framed photographs that had been removed. The carpet ended near a built-in window seat. Beneath the room, Grace said. We searched floorboards, drawers, and the closet. Nothing moved. Then my flashlight passed over a carved crescent on the underside of the window seat, the same shape as the scar near my wrist. I pressed it. A wooden panel opened, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside lay a metal box, a bundle of letters, and a small cassette recorder. Grace picked up the first envelope. It was addressed to David Cole. The handwriting belonged to someone named Rachel. David, if Andrew reaches you, take the boy and leave. Robert knows the warehouse fire was caused by the illegal fuel barrels he stored there. Andrew found the records and planned to tell Samuel. Robert struck him in the office and left him inside when the fire began. Andrew escaped, but Robert has blamed him for everything. I threatened to have me arrested as an accomplice if I refused to say Andrew stole the payroll. I am pregnant. Andrew says the child must never carry the Delaney name while Robert controls the family. If anything happens to us, raise him as your own. I stopped breathing. Grace read the final line again. Raise him as your own. The letter was dated 7 months before my birth. My hand shook as I opened the next. It was written by Andrew. David, Rachel is ill. The doctors say the pregnancy has weakened her heart. If she survives, we will leave the country. If she does not, promise me you will protect Nathan. I cannot return while Robert has the sheriff and the family attorneys on his side. I have hidden copies of the fuel invoices and the payroll records in Eleanor's room. The warehouse deaths were not murder, but Robert's greed caused them, and he let 2 men die rather than expose the illegal storage. I will find a way to clear my name. Until then, Nathan is safer believing you are his father. My knees weakened. I sat on the dusty floor. Grace knelt beside me without speaking. The letters explained the rest. Rachel died 3 days after giving birth. Andrew tried to retrieve me but was attacked on the road. David found him alive and drove him to a private clinic under another name. Andrew suffered a head injury and disappeared from the clinic before David returned. No confirmed trace of him appeared again. David took me to Ohio, changed our records, and raised me as his son. The cassette contained Eleanor's recorded testimony. Her voice trembled but remained clear. Robert admitted that he stored untaxed fuel in the warehouse and struck Andrew when confronted. He believed Andrew died in the fire. When Andrew escaped, Robert accused him publicly and threatened Rachel and David. I remained silent because Robert promised he would send David to prison and take Rachel's baby. I told myself I was protecting my grandson. In truth, I protected the son who frightened me and abandoned the son who needed me. Grace covered her mouth. My father knew. He created the lie. Beneath the recorder were invoices, photographs of the fuel barrels, statements from one surviving worker, and a document transferring Eleanor's voting shares into a trust for the lawful child of Andrew Delaney and Rachel Cole. If valid, I held enough shares to challenge Robert's control of both the vineyard and foundation. This is why he wanted you gone, Grace said. He researched me and saw the name Cole. He may not have known who I was until Samuel recognized me. Now he does. A sound came from the hall. The blue room door closed. Robert stood inside, holding the key. Give me the box, he said. Grace rose. You let the family believe Andrew killed 2 men. Andrew was reckless. You stored fuel illegally and caused the fire. I built this vineyard after he abandoned it. You stole his life. Robert's gaze moved toward me. David was supposed to keep the boy away. He kept me alive. He also understood that reopening the scandal would destroy every Delaney employee and every family connected to the vineyard. That was the threat you used for 35 years, Grace said. Do not use it again. Robert extended his hand. The box. No. She placed herself between him and me. You are protecting a man you met 4 days ago. I am protecting the truth from a man who has hidden it my entire life. I was hired to deceive us. And you have deceived us since before I was born. His face hardened. If those papers become public, the foundation's accounts will freeze, the schoolhouse project will die, Claire's wedding will become a media circus. Your mother will lose the home she spent her life preserving. Grace looked at the evidence, then at me. Robert had chosen each consequence carefully. You can protect them, he continued. Give me the box. Nathan leaves with enough money to rebuild his business. The board approves your project. Everyone gets what they wanted. Except Andrew, I said. Andrew is likely dead. Then his name matters more, not less. Robert reached for the box. Grace pulled it away. No. Think about the children you claim to care about. The manipulation struck its target. Her project could house dozens of young people. Exposing Robert might delay it for years. I touched her shoulder. Grace, give me the documents. She turned, shocked. What? Give them to me. You cannot seriously consider his offer. I am not. I took the box. But the decision should not be yours alone. Robert relaxed slightly. I removed my phone from my pocket. The recording app had been running since he entered. You admitted enough. His expression changed. He lunged toward me. I stepped back, but he struck my wrist and the box fell. Papers scattered. Grace grabbed the cassette while I blocked Robert from reaching it. He shoved me against the window seat. The old wood cracked. Grace ran to the door, but it was locked. She pulled the fire alarm beside the hallway bell system. A siren erupted through the house. Robert caught her arm. I drove my shoulder into him, forcing him away. The door opened from outside. Claire, Margaret, Samuel's nurse, and several relatives crowded the hall. Robert froze with one hand gripping my jacket. Samuel stood behind them in a robe, leaning on his cane. "You locked Andrew in once," he said. "You will not lock his son in too." Robert released me. Grace carried the evidence into the hall. "Well, call the police," she told Claire, "and call the foundation's attorney, not father's attorney, the independent counsel." Robert attempted to deny everything, but the recording, Eleanor's testimony, and the original records ended the argument. Samuel confirmed that Andrew had shown him the fuel invoices before the fire. Margaret admitted she had seen Robert burn letters from Rachel years later. The police took possession of the box before dawn. Robert was not arrested immediately, but he was ordered to remain available while investigators reopened the warehouse case, the fraud allegations, and Andrew's disappearance. The family gathered in the drawing room as sunlight entered through the tall windows. Claire's wedding was scheduled for that afternoon. She sat beside Grace, still wearing her robe, and said, "We are not canceling." Margaret stared at her. "Your father may be charged. And marrying the man I love is not an endorsement of father's choices." She looked at Grace. "We have spent too many years letting secrets decide which days we are allowed to live." The ceremony moved to a smaller garden away from reporters. Grace and I sat together in the back row. Our false engagement had been exposed, but her family no longer seemed interested in judging it. During the vows, she slipped her hand into mine. "No audience needs convincing," I whispered. "I know." "Then why are you holding my hand?" "Because I want to." That answer frightened me more than Robert's threats. After the ceremony, Samuel asked to speak with me beneath the old oak tree. He carried a sealed letter addressed to Nathan. "David sent this to Eleanor after your father disappeared from the clinic," he said. "Robert intercepted most of their correspondence. I found it years later, but did not know where you were." I opened it. Nathan, if you ever learn that I was not your biological father, remember this. Biology explains how you arrived. It does not measure who stayed awake when you were sick, taught you to read, or feared every day that the truth would take you away. Andrew loved you before he vanished. Rachel loved you enough to trust me. I loved you enough to become the father you needed, though fear made me hide more than I should have. Do not let the Delaney name erase the Cole life we built. You are not half of either family, you are the whole of both. I read the last lines twice before folding the letter. "He was my father," I said. "Yeah," Samuel replied. "So was Andrew, in another way." "Do you believe Andrew survived?" "For several years, perhaps. I received one postcard from Canada with no return address. It contained only 3 words. Is Nathan safe?" "What did you answer?" "I wrote to the address David provided. I said you were loved." My throat tightened. Was that the truth? Samuel looked toward Grace, who stood across the garden helping her sister adjust the wedding veil for photographs. "It is now." The investigation lasted 6 months. Financial records confirmed Robert had redirected vineyard funds and controlled the family foundation through forged proxies. Forensic review of the old warehouse proved that improperly stored fuel caused the fire. Robert had not intentionally killed the workers, but he had concealed the danger, attacked Andrew, and built his inheritance on the resulting lie. He was removed from every family position and eventually pleaded guilty to fraud, obstruction, and assault-related charges that remained prosecutable. Andrew's trail proved harder to follow. Clinic records listed him under the name Aaron Cole. He left after recovering partial memory and crossed into Canada. A social worker located one final record showing he died in Nova Scotia 12 years later. He had never married and had kept a photograph of Rachel holding me as a newborn. The news hurt in a way I had not expected. I had found my biological father only after learning I could never speak to him. Yet knowing he had asked whether I was safe changed the shape of his absence. He had not forgotten me. He had been injured, frightened, and lost inside another name. The Delaney Foundation board restored Andrew's shares to a trust in my name. I accepted only after an agreement ensured that no employee lost work and that the majority of the inheritance funded Grace's residential education center. She objected at first. "You do not owe my project your family's money," she said during a meeting at my workshop. It was stolen from Andrew's future. He wanted me safe. Helping young people build safe lives seems appropriate. You are making an emotional decision. So are you every time you pretend budgets are neutral? She smiled despite herself. You have become difficult. You hired me because you needed someone convincing. We had returned to being friends, or something close enough to friendship that neither of us named the difference. Once a week, she visited the workshop to review renovation plans. We ate takeout on overturned crates and argued about windows, storage, and whether exposed brick was beautiful or simply unfinished. The contract was gone. The sapphire ring remained locked in my desk. Neither of us discussed the night she held my hand at the wedding. I told myself she needed distance from the scandal. The truth was that I feared any relationship between us would be mistaken for gratitude, inheritance, or the emotional aftermath of danger. Grace appeared to share the concern. She never touched me unnecessarily. She never stayed after the work was done. Then one evening, 3 months after the investigation closed, she found the ring while searching my desk for a pencil. You kept it, she said. It belongs to you. I paid for it. Then it belongs to you financially. Emotionally? I set down the cabinet door I was sanding. It belonged to an arrangement. Was that all? No. The answer came too quickly to disguise. She closed the drawer. Nathan, we should not do this because our families were connected. I know. Or because you funded the center. I know. Or because I defended you against my father. Grace. She stopped. I loved you before Samuel called me Andrew. Her face went still. You had known me 4 days. I noticed you before then. I loved you later. There's a difference. When? Somewhere between watching you sacrifice your board seat for a stranger and watching you spend 3 hours redesigning a bedroom because one foster care advisor said institutional lighting caused anxiety. That is not romantic. Neither was your contract. She looked away. You cannot ask me to trust feelings born inside a deception. I am not asking for marriage. I am asking for dinner. We have eaten dinner dozens of times. A real one. No blueprints, no relatives, no board agenda. And if it goes badly, you can hire another fiancé. She laughed, then immediately tried to stop. That was not funny. It was slightly funny. Her expression softened. One dinner. Friday? 7. Should I bring the ring? Absolutely not. Our first real date took place at a restaurant near the river, far from Delaney Ridge. Grace wore a red dress instead of the neutral colors she preferred at work. I forgot 3 sentences while looking at her. You are nervous, Jedian, she said. I am trying to answer precisely. That means you are afraid? You remembered. A fake fiancé should. You are not fake tonight. The waiter arrived before she could answer. We spoke about childhood, failure, and the people we had become outside our families. Grace admitted that she created ambitious projects because usefulness made her feel harder to reject. I admitted that after losing my parents and business, temporary roles had felt safer than belonging anywhere permanently. That is why Samuel's question affected you, Bite, she said. He asked why you came home. I did not know I had one. Do you now? I looked at her across the candlelit table. I know home is not the estate. Good. It may be a person. She lowered her eyes. That is dangerously close to one of your proposal lines. I can discuss foundations instead. Please do not. When I walked her to her car, rain began. We stood beneath the restaurant awning while water blurred the streetlights. During the contract, what? She said, we agreed one kiss might be necessary. I remember. It never happened. Your family discovered the lie before suspicion required it. There is no family here. No. She stepped closer. No contract either. Also true. Then what would make a kiss necessary now? Nothing. I touched her cheek. That is why it would matter. I waited until she nodded. The kiss was slow, uncertain for only a second, then warm enough to erase every rehearsed gesture we had performed at Delaney Ridge. Her hands closed around my jacket. When we separated, she rested her forehead against my chest. That was a terrible professional decision, she whispered. I left the agency. When? The morning after the wedding. She looked up. Why? I did not want anyone else hiring me to pretend to belong beside them. Her smile trembled. Good. We dated for a year before discussing marriage. The Andrew and Rachel Center opened in the renovated schoolhouse with 30 apartments, classrooms, studios, and a carpentry workshop where I taught twice a week. Grace became executive director after the board unanimously approved her appointment without asking whether she had a husband. Margaret moved into a smaller home near the vineyard and began visiting the center every Wednesday. Claire had a son and named him Samuel Andrew. Robert wrote letters from prison asking forgiveness. Grace read them but did not answer until she was ready. I visited once. He looked older than his years and asked whether I hated him. Some days, I said. Other days I am too busy building what you tried to prevent. Andrew would have inherited everything. He wanted a family, not control. You cannot know that. He spent his final years asking whether I was safe. That tells me enough. Forgiveness did not arrive as a dramatic release. It appeared in smaller choices. Correcting Andrew's name in family records, allowing Robert's grandchildren to ask honest questions, and refusing to let shame become another secret passed down. Samuel lived long enough to see the center open. At the ceremony, he took my hand and called me Nathan. I am sorry I mistook you for Andrew, he said. You gave me the question I needed. Which question? Whether I had come home. And have you? I looked across the courtyard where Grace stood laughing with teenagers painting a mural. I think I am still arriving. Samuel smiled. That is how home works. On the anniversary of our first dinner, Grace invited the entire family back to Delaney Ridge. I arrived late because one of the center's residents needed help repairing a broken desk. When I entered the dining room, everyone sat in almost the same places as the night Samuel recognized me. His chair stood empty. He had died peacefully 2 months earlier, leaving me his cane and a note that said, "The oldest guest should never be trusted to remain quiet." Grace met me near the doorway. You finally decided to come home, she said. The echo stopped me. Is that a question? An observation. You sound like Samuel. He asked me to use the line when the time was right. She took my hand and led me to the table. After dinner, she asked me to walk with her to the orchard fence where Andrew received the scar that matched mine. Lanterns hung between the trees. You arranged this, I said. I inherited some controlling tendencies. At least you admit them. She stopped beside the old iron fence. The first time you came here, you were pretending to love me. Then my family asked why you had returned to a home you did not know existed. I spent a long time worrying that everything between us came from that night. And now? Now I know the mystery brought us into the same room. It did not make you stay. It did not make me call you after the investigation. It did not create the life we have built. Grace, are you proposing? She smiled. That depends. Do you object? Strongly. I had plans. Architectural plans? Carpentry plans. I reached into my jacket and removed a small wooden box I had made from oak, salvaged from the blue room's broken window seat. Her eyes filled with tears. You knew. Samuel was not good at keeping new secrets. Inside was a ring made with the sapphire from our false engagement reset into a simple gold band. Beneath it, carved into the wood, were the words "no role, no contract, no borrowed home." I lowered myself onto one knee. The first time I wore the title of your fiancé, it belonged to a lie we believed would protect your future. Since then, you have shown me that love is not protection from uncertainty. It is choosing honesty inside it. You did not rescue me from my past. You stood beside me while I faced it. You did not give me a family. You helped me understand I had the right to choose one. Her tears fell freely now. Grace Delaney, will you marry me for real and keep choosing the ordinary days after every mystery is solved? She knelt in front of me. Stand up. This is traditional. Our first engagement followed enough traditions. I stood, and she placed both hands around my face. Yes, but we stand together. I slipped the ring onto her finger. Cheers erupted from behind the orchard wall. The entire family had followed us despite Grace's instructions. Claire blamed Margaret. Margaret blamed Samuel's note. I kissed Grace while everyone applauded, and for once neither of us cared who was watching. We married the following spring at the center, rather than the estate. The ceremony took place in the courtyard beneath the mural painted by its first residents. Margaret carried Andrew's photograph. Marcus, the man who raised me after David died, attended and cried harder than anyone. Robert was not permitted to leave prison, but he sent a letter accepting responsibility without asking us to forgive him. Grace read it privately and placed it in the family archive beside Eleanor's testimony, Andrew's letters, and David's final message. We did not hide the painful parts, we labeled them clearly. Years later, our daughter asked why her mother's engagement ring looked older than their marriage. Grace told her it had once been used in a pretend promise. Did Daddy lie? She asked. We both did, Grace said. But then we became brave enough to tell the truth. The sapphire still bears a tiny scratch from the night it fell onto the blue room floor. Grace refused to have it polished away. She says reminders should not be erased simply because the ending became beautiful. I agree. My father Andrew never returned to Delaney Ridge, but his name did. David Cole never received public recognition for protecting me, yet every ordinary day of my childhood carries his love. Samuel spent decades waiting for a nephew and found that nephew's son instead. Grace hired a stranger because her family had convinced her that appearing loved mattered more than being respected. I accepted because temporary belonging felt safer than asking anyone to choose me permanently. We both believed we were controlling a lie. Instead, one old man looked across at dinner table and asked why I had finally decided to come home. At the time, I thought he had mistaken me for someone else. In a way, he had. He saw Andrew's face, Andrew's scar, and Andrew's unfinished return. But perhaps he also saw something I could not yet recognize. A man standing at the edge of a family, frightened of wanting a place inside it. Home did not become mine because of blood, inheritance, or a restored surname. It became mine because Grace stood beside me when leaving would have protected her ambitions, because Margaret opened the room her husband had sealed, because Claire refused to postpone joy until every scandal ended, and because Samuel called me Nathan before he died. Most of all, it became mine because after the contracts, accusations, investigations, and old photographs were put away, Grace and I continued choosing each other when there was no audience left to convince. That is what home means to me now. It is not where someone assumes you belong. It is where someone knows exactly who you are and still makes room at the table. And every year when our family gathers for dinner, Grace leaves Samuel's chair empty until the meal begins. Then she places a photograph of him on the seat and whispers the answer, I wish I could have given him that first night. I came home because someone finally told me the truth. I stayed because someone loved me as myself. If this story reminded you that belonging is chosen through truth rather than inherited through a name, subscribe and share it with someone who is still searching for home. And tell me in the comments, would you have stayed after an old stranger recognized you as a missing relative? Or would the family's secrets have made you walk away?